Snow swallows the road. Steel groans in the cold. Ahead, just a few miles beyond the tree line, lies Bastogne. The men of the 37th Tank Battalion catch a glimpse of the sign, Elsenborn. On point is an M4A3E2, with a name stenciled on its glacis, Cobra King. A week earlier, German commanders laughed at the idea that shopkeepers could stand and fight. They called this offensive Wacht am Rhein a last throw of the dice to split the Allies and grab Antwerp. They thought speed and surprise would do the job. For a while, it did. SS Oberstgruppenführer Joseph Sepp Dietrich, Commander, 6th SS Panzer Army. Americans are merchants playing at war. Lieutenant General George S. Patton, Jr., Commander, U.S. 3rd Army. Give me 48 hours and I'll attack. Brigadier General Anthony C. McAuliffe, Acting Commander, 101st Airborne Division, Nuts. From mockery to defiance. From Verdun to Bastogne, a 90-degree pivot in the dead of winter. 48 hours to move an army, punch a hole, and break a ring of steel. This is how German mockery ended when Patton's 3rd Army shattered the ring around Bastogne. Before the snow swallowed the roads, the plan had a name, Wacht am Rhein, Watch on the Rhine. The aim was not a local jab, it was a lunge to the Meuse and all the way to Antwerp. Cut the British and Americans in half, seize the ports, then force a political crisis.
Drive to Antwerp, split the Allies, bet everything.
On paper, the attack split 3 ways. North, the 6th SS Panzer Army under SS Oberstgruppenführer Joseph Sepp Dietrich would crash past Elsenborn Ridge and Malmedy, grab crossings to Liège, and race the first miles to the Meuse. Center, General der Panzertruppe Hasso von Manteuffel and the 5th Panzer Army would pierce the thin American line near the Schnee Eifel, roll through Street Vith, and push onto the bridges at Dinant, south. General der Panzertruppe Erich Brandenberger with the 7th Army would screen the flank through Luxembourg, not a glory roll, but essential to keep Patton from slamming the door early. The men at the top did not agree. General Feldmarschall Gerd von Rundstedt, the theater commander in the west, looked at the fuel charts and shook his head.
We lack strategic reserves.
General Feldmarschall Walter Model, running Army Group B, argued to shrink the ambition, make it a limited offensive, not a dash to the sea.
Scale it to what the army can actually do.
But the green light held. The deception label Wacht am Rhein sounded defensive by design. Troops moved at night, radios went dark, bridges were scouted. And in the pre-dawn of December 16th, 1944, 1,900 guns tore open the stillness. Early on, contempt crept into command tents. Dietrich's staff joked about shopkeepers. Yet on the ground, the fight refused to be simple. Elsenborn Ridge did not break. The 99th and 2nd Infantry Divisions dug in and held. Street Vith, under Major General Robert W. Hasbrouck and a patchwork of stragglers, became a speed bump that lasted days, not hours. Those delays mattered. They squeezed the German timetable and pushed the columns into the choke points. The Ardennes is infamous for one-lane roads, hairpin turns, and villages with a single stone bridge. Then came the math that no bravado could fix. The Wehrmacht and Waffen-SS had tanks and guts but not gas. Their logistics assumed captured American fuel and intact bridges. Meanwhile, the Luftwaffe, bled for years, had few veteran pilots left to control the sky once the weather cleared. By contrast, the Americans had less romance and more infrastructure. FM radio nets that didn't dissolve in static. A highway of trucks called the Red Ball Express that had already fed an army across France. Military police who turned crossroads into metronomes. And a new trick in the artillery toolkit, the proximity fuse that could burst shells above tree lines and foxholes with brutal precision. Still, in that first week, the center did bite deep. And here's our myth versus reality Hasson. Myth. The SS spearhead drove the deepest wedge into the Allied lines. Reality. The farthest thrust belonged to the Wehrmacht's 2nd Panzer Division under Manteuffel's 5th Panzer Army, not Dietrich's SS. They surged past Marche, skittered toward the Meuse, and reached Celles, just outside Dinant, in the days around Christmas. They didn't get the river. U.S. 2nd Armored Division Hell on Wheels met them head-on near Celles and Humaine, trading shots until the German momentum ran dry, literally and figuratively. When the snow settled, the deepest wedge wasn't a black SS arrow, it was a gray Wehrmacht spear that stopped short of the Meuse. Back north, contempt turned to frustration. Kampfgruppe Piper, the celebrity hammer of the 1st SS Panzer Division, kept finding bridges blown by American engineers. Lieutenant Colonel David E. Pergrin and the 291st Engineer Combat Battalion dropped the spans at Trois Ponts and Stavelot, boxing paper into a pocket around La Glaise. Fuel bled away. Engines went cold. The Invincibles ended up abandoning armor and slipping out on foot. Lieutenant Colonel David E. Pergrin, 291st ECB, blow the bridges, make the tanks walk. All the while, a different race was unfolding on the southern axis, the one our story hinges on. As the ring tightened around Bastogne, Brigadier General Anthony C. McAuliffe answered the German surrender demand with a single word, nuts, and then went back to counting shells and plasma. He could buy time. He could not break a siege. That's where the overconfidence north of Bastogne and the delays around Street Vith intersected with a third variable, speed of reaction. The Germans had gambled that American armies were too slow to pivot. On December 19th, Lieutenant General George S. Patton, Jr. said the quiet part out loud. Give me 48 hours and I'll attack. Overconfidence meets a moving target. In the Ardennes, contempt was cheap. Fuel and time were not. And as the sky began to clear on December 23rd, the equation of the battle was about to change, first in the air, then on the ground, and finally at the gates of Assenois, where a tank named Cobra King was already warming up. 5:30 a.m., December 16th, 1944, the Ardennes stops breathing. 1,900 German guns speak at once, howitzers, Nebelwerfers, heavy artillery ripping open the tree line. It's still dark. The snow reflects orange like a storm at sea. Telephones die, wire lines go slack, and along the thinly held American front, outposts vanish under tree bursts. The first cracks appear where the line is youngest. The 106th Infantry Division, new to the front, stretches across the Schnee Eifel. By mid-morning, German armor threads into the seams, not so much breaking the defense as bypassing it, classic infiltration. Two of the 106th regiments, the 422nd and 423rd Infantry, are pushed back into the forests near Schönberg and Blealf. Radios sputter. Runners don't come back. To the north, the story is different. The Elsenborn Ridge, a long, frozen spine above Bullingen and Malmedy, does not move. The 99th Infantry Division, the checkerboard, locks shoulder to shoulder with the battle-hardened 2nd Infantry Division. German attacks hammer the ridge, and American artillery answers with a new kind of timing, proximity fuses that burst shells over the snowpack, spraying fragments down into trenches and among the pines. Somewhere on that ridge, a 19-year-old rifleman from the 99th writes by red-lensed flashlight. He doesn't talk about tactics. He writes about the cold 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit, the way spruce trees explode when shells detonate above them, and how the snow turns gray with ash. He ends with a line to his mother. Paraphrase, it's loud, but we're holding. Holding is not glamorous. On Elsenborn, it means staying awake long enough to call fire missions, then crawling forward before first light to reset trip flares, so the next wave can't sneak in under the fog. It means FM radio nets that actually carry a fire correction the first time, and military police turning churned crossroads into one-way arteries, so ammo trucks and evac jeeps don't paralyze each other. Slide southwest a few miles, and the map looks worse. Street Vith, a rail and road hub, is the cork in the bottleneck. Major General Robert W. Hasbrouck, commanding the 7th Armored Division, arrives into a swirl of retreating units and fractured reports. His solution is pure fieldcraft, a mobile defense. He breaks the division into combat commands, plugs gaps with tank destroyers and engineers, and keeps the whole thing moving, trading space for hours. Maj. General Robert W. Hasbrouck, CG 7th Armored Division. We hold by maneuver, not by concrete. For 5 to 6 days, Street Vith refuses to be the easy road on the German timetable. Shermans reverse out of kill zones. Half-tracks drop infantry, then peel to fetch more AT rounds. When a strong point is about to be pinched, Hasbrouck pulls it back before dawn to the next ridge, forcing the attackers to reset and attack into guns that are already zeroed. It doesn't look like victory on camera. It sounds like breaks and shouted grid numbers. But every hour it buys makes the rest of the map survivable. December 17, Baugnies Crossroads, near Malmedy. Men from Battery B, 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion, captured while moving to the rear, are herded into a snowy field. Shots crack, then keep cracking. 84 American prisoners of war do not get back up. We call it the Malmedy Massacre now. In 1944, word travels unit to unit without the word massacre. It travels as a feeling no more illusions about the opponent's restraint. Back along the Schnee Eifel, the pocket tightens. Major General Alan W. Jones, commanding the 106th, tries to stitch radio nets back together. He has fragments of regiments, a blown crossroads, and a forest full of German patrols that seem to be behind every trail bend. Maj. General Alan W. Jones, CG 106th Infantry Division.
We're losing contact not just with regiments, but with the ground beneath our feet.
By December 18, the 422nd and 423rd are low on food and nearly out of artillery support. They mount local attacks to break west, but hit panzers already holding the roads. In the pockets, medics melt snow for water, and officers pass the last hot rations to the machine gun crews. When the order finally comes on December 19, surrender, it's not cowardice, it's arithmetic. Thousands of men step into captivity. The line on the map will remember the surrender. The reality is that for 3 days, those regiments kept far more German troops east of the Meuse than Hitler ever budgeted for. And yet north the ridge holds. West Street, Vith delays. Center the pocket buys time. The common denominator is control under pressure. On Elsenborn, artillery liaison teams, some fresh from stateside, call in fires like clockwork because their FM sets don't squawk out at the worst moment. Near Street, Vith, engineers' mine likely approaches, mark lanes in the snow for friendly armor, then go out again to pull the mines before a planned withdrawal. At every crossroads, MPs stand in the wind with clipboard and whistle, forcing order out of panic. What about the air? For now, it's a rumor. The ceiling is low, the fog is thick, and the Luftwaffe still has enough fight to show up where the front is thinnest. American pilots curse the overcast. Infantrymen bless it, at least it hides them from Stukas and cannon, armed fighters. But the weather is a coin, both sides need it. The Germans had planned on days of cloud cover to keep Allied air power grounded while their fuel columns raced forward. Every extra day of murk helps them almost as much as it helps us. Through it all, the thermometer is the enemy, nobody can outflank. 10-15 degrees Fahrenheit means weapons jam from congealed oil, tracks slip on glassy roads, and stretcher teams take 2 hours to move a casualty, the distance a jeep covers in 10 minutes. At Bastogne, now surrounded as of December 20, ammo is rationed by the Bandolier. Brigadier General Anthony C. McAuliffe, acting commander of the 101st Airborne Division, files the nuts. Note on December 22, but in our window now, he's still playing the crueler game. How many rounds per hour can each battery afford to spend and still be firing tomorrow? And so we arrive at December 19, the pivot inside the storm. The German offensive has fire and shock, but no spare hours. The Americans have friction, holes, and cold, but they're starting to trade those for time. In the fortified quiet of Verdun, General of the Army Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander, looks at a wall of arrows and a casualty sheet that's getting heavier by the hour. He doesn't ask for speeches, he asks for movement. Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander, the Ardennes is critical. The phone call goes out. General Omar N. Bradley, 12th Army Group, nods his agreement. And then comes the voice that changes the geometry of the map. Lieutenant General George S. Patton, Jr., Commanding General.
Give me 48 hours and I'll attack.
We've covered Elsenborn's stand, Street, Vith's delay, the pocket's sacrifice, the cold. The fog buys exactly enough time for that sentence to mean something in the real world. The next 48 hours will test whether an army can turn itself on winter roads without shattering, and whether a German high command that mocked American willpower can adapt before a tank named Cobra King reaches a village called Assinois. From here, the clock will drive the story. 12/20 to 12/22. Columns on the move, 12/23. Skies opening, 12/26. A door through Assinois. The mockery ends not with a slogan, but with miles, maps, and men who refuse to freeze in place. December 19, Verdun. The room is crowded with maps and bad news. General of the Army Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander, doesn't pace or raise his voice. He simply points at the Bulge swelling west. Paraphrase, George, the Ardennes is critical. Across the table, Lieutenant General George S. Patton, Jr., commanding the U.S. Third Army, doesn't need a pep talk. He's carried a contingency in his pocket for 3 days, 3 attack plans, 3 axes of advance, all with traffic tables and fuel math. He doesn't posture, he answers. I can attack with 3 divisions in 48 hours. General Omar N. Bradley, commander of 12th U.S. Army Group, nods once short, practical. Paraphrase, then turn north. We'll clear you the roads. Behind that nod is a burst of staff work. Signal units shifting nets, MP battalions righting one, way grids on iced roads, quartermasters retagging depots for a battlefield that has just rotated 90 degrees. There's a footnote worth getting right. At Verdun, Eisenhower's chief of staff, Lieutenant General Walter Bedell Beetle Smith, frames the blunt question, who can attack and when? But the decision is Eisenhower's, and the promise is Patton's. The clock starts the moment the phones hang up. Now another hard call. The northern shoulder is a snarl broken wires, units intermixing, bridges under threat. To unify the defense along the Meuse and coordinate the counterblow, Eisenhower temporarily shifts operational control in the north on December 20. Field Marshal Bernard L. Montgomery, commanding 21st Army Group, takes responsibility for the 1st U.S. Army and 9th U.S. Army on that sector. It isn't about nationality. It's about span of control. With the Meuse crossings to guard, Elsenborn Ridge to hold, and Street Vith still buying hours, someone must synchronize the entire northern shield while Bradley frees Patton to punch from the south. The map no longer reads left to right. It reads hinge and hammer. Orders ripple outward. Patton signals Major General Hugh J. Gaffey's 4th Armored Division, lead north through Arlon toward Assenoy. He tasks Major General Willard S. Paul's 26th Infantry to secure the Luxembourg approaches, and Major General Horace L. McBride's 80th Infantry to clear the Sur, divided by Alzette Corridor. In the north, under Montgomery, 1st Army tightens the Elsenborn line and blocks the Meuse bridges. 9th Army anchors the flank. It's a coalition maneuver, drawn in Allied blue grease pencil, executed in American miles. Maj. General Hugh J. Gaffey, CG, 4th Armored Division. We'll get there. Just keep the roads open. By nightfall December 20, the chessboard is reset. Montgomery holds the hinge in the north. Bradley clears lanes for the hammer in the south. And Patton, who just turned an army on winter roads, pushes his vanguard toward a village named Assenoy and a siege that still thinks it's safe. Gentlemen, we turn north and attack in 48 hours. It's not bravado, it's a timetable. Lieutenant General George S. Patton, Jr., commanding the 3rd U.S. Army, has just reversed an army's front in winter. In the assault column, Major General Hugh J. Gaffey, the hard-driving commander of the 4th Armored Division, studies the ice-blue roads and the fuel math. Paraphrase, Sir, the logistics are close to impossible. Patton doesn't blink. Supplies will come, not magic method. Explainer, how you move an army in a blizzard. Armor on the main highways. Tanks and half-tracks get the widest curves and strongest bridges. Infantry on secondary roads. Truck columns leapfrogging fuel points. Artillery and service trains on the back roads. Ammunition first, then everything else. Military police turn junctions into one-way valves. Engineer battalions sand the black ice and mark weak bridges by tonnage. Movements run at night, under blackout hoods. By day, columns hide in tree lines and hamlets to dodge Luftwaffe eyes. Every task net is alive on FM radio, clearer, shorter, harder to jam, keeping march units in step without a single light signal. Listen close, and you'll hear America's logistics heartbeat. Quartermasters shove fuel blivets and crate after crate of 30 to 0, 6 and 105 millimeters forward to meet the columns. French depots are unlocked, retagged, and swallowed whole. When an assault gun breaks a track, a wrecker is already rolling, guided by a frequency and a grid square. Micro-story Red Ball at night. A driver from the Red Ball Express, one of the mostly African-American truckers who kept Europe moving, keeps his GMC in 2nd gear on a glassy grade. Paraphrase, blackout lights, sheet ice, and a map the color of snow. The sergeant said, 48 hours means 48 hours. So we drove. He doesn't have a headline unit crest. He has a convoy number and a deadline. This is what Patton means by supplies will come, fuel points leapfrog ahead of the spearheads, ammo trains are scheduled to the minute. MPs stage rolling blocks, so an armored column never has to break on a slope. It's not a miracle, it's a discipline. By midnight December 20, The 4th Armored Division is over the border at Arlon. By the next afternoon, infantry of the 26th is firming the Luxembourg approaches, and the 80th is crowding Diacure on the Sour. Over 10,000 vehicles breathe white into the night and keep rolling. The trick is simple to say and hell to do. Don't stop. The cold is not theater, it's the enemy. At 10-15 degrees Fahrenheit, oil thickens, canvas stiffens, and the snow crust hides ruts that can snap a spring pack. Crews tie scarves under helmets, wedge socks under parkas, and learn a new tempo. 25 miles an hour on a cleared highway, 15 on the crust, 0 if you misjudge a crown and slide into a ditch. Recovery crews run with tow bars pre-pinned. Up north, where Field Marshal Bernard L. Montgomery has temporary control, 1st U.S. Free. Army is tightening the Elsenborn hinge and guarding the Meuse bridges. That stability buys exactly what Patton needs time, so the Southern Hammer can land. At the tip of the hammer rides Combat Command R and Combat Command B of the 4th Armored Division, with Lieutenant Colonel Creighton W. Abrams' 37th Tank Battalion keyed to the Assiniboia Road. Behind them, armored infantry in half-tracks, patient, cold, loaded ready to peel off, clear crossroads, and guard the flanks. A quick pause to give credit where it's long overdue. The Red Ball Express, largely, black soldiers ran the tires off their trucks to feed this pivot. And the 761st Tank Battalion, the Black Panthers, fighting under 3rd Army, will be in the Bulge before January villages like Tilley, proving again that steel matters, but people move the steel. Daylight December 22, scrapes across hedgerows and orchard walls. The 101st Airborne Division is still ringed in Bastogne, rationing shells and plasma. The 10th Armored Division's combat teams Cherry, O'Hara, de Sabri still hold the outworks with what armor they have left. Inside town, Brigadier General Anthony C. McAuliffe keeps saying the same thing in a dozen ways. Hold. South of that ring, Gaffey's lead battalions thread the last choke points, Neufchâteau, Martelange, Tintange, with MPs freezing at every fork to wave them through. Engineer Company scouts stab ice with picks before a Sherman commits. A wrong turn wastes minutes. A detoured bridge can waste hours the 3rd Army doesn't have. Patton's creed for this march is simple. Speed is security. Don't let the enemy guess where the column will pop out. Don't let the weather dictate the schedule. Fill the gaps with initiative. If a battalion loses the road net, find another lane, and keep marching toward the sound of the guns. By afternoon on the 22nd, the smell of pine and cordite is getting stronger. 4th, Armored has clipped 8 to 10 miles off the distance to Bastogne and is probing for a lane that won't become a coffin under 88 seconds. The hammer is in motion, warmed by gasoline and anger, and every mile gained now will shorten the list of names read later. Bastogne isn't just a town, it's a wheel hub. 7 roads radiate through the Ardennes, and in December 1944 that means one thing. Whoever holds Bastogne controls movement across the southern half of the Bulge. By the evening of December 20, German armor has thrown a ring around it. Inside the pocket, the defense is more than a single patch. It's a stitched-together garrison. At the core, the 101st Airborne Division, commanded in Bastogne by Brigadier General Anthony C. McAuliffe, the quiet artilleryman, pressed into the top chair while the division commander is away. Around the rim, heavy help from the 10th Armored Division, whose combat teams have been thrown forward to hold the road approaches. Team de Sabri in the north at Noville, Team Cherry guarding the eastern approaches, Team O'Hara watching the south at Warden and Marvey. Add in attached tank destroyers, engineers, and extra corps artillery, and the town becomes a porcupine. They are light on everything that matters in a siege: shells, plasma, winter clothes, and heavy on what counts most: terrain sense and stubbornness. The town sits on a low rise, ringed by woods and fields, where an M4 can hull down and a bazooka team can disappear between stone barns. The 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion's M18 Hellcats prowl the lanes. Glider and parachute artillery of the 101st ring the town with guns that can mass fires from multiple battalions in minutes. Aid stations move into cellars. Roadblocks sprout from felled pines, snow, and burned-out hulks. On December 22, German envoys step through the snow with a neat demand for surrender to spare unnecessary bloodshed. The paper is formal. The answer isn't. Nuts is more than bravado. It buys time a message to every outpost that no one is negotiating their sacrifice away. On the radio net above Bastogne, Lieutenant General Courtney H. Hodges commanding the 1st U.S. Army on the North Shoulder, pushes a simple line paraphrase. Hold a little longer. We are hammering from both north and south. The south hammer is Patton, the north hinge is Elsenborn, and the Meuse bridges. In between, Bastogne must stay in American hands. One more problem, the sky. Low cloud and freezing fog have grounded most Allied air for a week. No eyes, no air cover, and no resupply. On the morning of December 23, the gray finally tears open into winter blue. It's not poetry, it's logistics. The IX Troop Carrier Command rides the clear weather hard. C-47 Skytrains drop bundles marked by colored panels, 30 to 06, 50 calories, 81 millimeters, 105 millimeters, plasma, radio batteries, rations, boots. Some drift into German lines. Wind is a fact of war, but enough land on the DZs hacked from frozen fields to change the arithmetic. Medics tear open plasma tins. Artillery sergeants hug fuse crates like gold. Paratroopers swap out frostbitten boots. In the following days, gliders claw down onto ragged fields, Waco, CG-4 Amperes, and Horsa, bringing in what parachutes can't, bulky loads, medical teams, and specialized gear. It's dangerous flying. The landing zones are short, the air full of flak and wreckage. But each intact glider means more weight inside the ring and less leverage for the attacker. On the North Rim, Team de Sobry at Noville has already paid in blood to slow the German approach, buying hours for the 101st to dig deeper. On the east, Team Cherry keeps the Longueville and Magaret corridors spiked with roadblocks and guns hull down in farmyards. To the south, Team O'Hara chews up attack after attack around Warden and Marvey, trading ground for time, then counterpunching with Hellcats in 105 seconds. None of these teams is large. All of them punch above their weight, because every delay compounds across those 7 roads. Bastogne's heroics are not stainless. Rations are down. Mortar rounds get rationed by the tube. Aid posts run out of morphine and rely on grit and bandages warmed under armpits. Civilians huddle in cellars while shells walk the streets. Radio batteries die and are resurrected by the fresh stock falling from the sky. But morale has a spine now. Nuts, on paper, parachutes under the clouds, and a rumor that's much more than a rumor. The 4th Armored Division is coming. Here's how the defense keeps the ring intact. Interlocking fields of fire, reverse, slope positions, and time on target missions that make German infantry hit the dirt and stay there. Engineers seed choke points with mines and cut lanes only they know. Bazooka teams wait at angles, not straight down the road. Hellcats sprint, shoot, and scoot, refusing the duel on German terms. Whenever a local bulge forms, a battalion fire mission flattens it back to the snowline. Over the net, McAuliffe runs a calm switchboard paraphrase. Hold your ground. If you can't hold, delay, and call for fires. If you can't delay, break contact and re-anchor on the next hedgerow. The point isn't to look pretty on a map. It's to survive on this ground until a green cloverleaf patch, the insignia of the 4th Armored Division, appears through the snow at the southern edge. All day on the 23rd, P-47 Thunderbolts rake road columns that had been safe under the fog. They don't win the siege alone, but they change the math of who runs out first. Ammunition and gasoline are the true rulers of winter war. By nightfall, the Americans inside Bastogne have more of both, and the Germans outside have less of each. Bastogne is still a trap on the map, but the jaws aren't closing anymore. The garrison has food, medicine, batteries, and belief. Outside the ring, Gaffey's columns are feeling the town's breath on their faces. The next chapter isn't about holding, it's about breaking the ring, and the road to that moment runs through Assenois. Late afternoon, December 26, south of Bastogne, the woods open to fields ribboned with hedgerows. The spear point is here, 37th Tank Battalion, 4th Armored Division, under Lieutenant Colonel Creighton W. Abrams, lean, deliberate, a tanker who hates to waste time. At the head of the column rolls a heavyweight, an M4A3E2 Jumbo Sherman with extra armor and a name chalked on the glacis, Cobra King. On the turret, 1st Lieutenant Charles P. Bogus, Company C, scans through a slit of glass and frozen mud. The order is simple and savage. Find a seam, punch through, and don't stop until you touch the 101st. Lieutenant Colonel Creighton W. Abrams, radio, paraphrase. Keep the throttle down, open that corridor into town. 1st Lieutenant Charles P. Bogus, over engine roar. Drive. Bastogne ahead. The column hits the first roadblock like a fist hedgehog's, logs, a farm cart spiked across the lane. Cobra King hammers it aside as the bow gun rakes the ditch. Armored infantry slide off the decks into the hedgerow, grenades thump under the MG-42. A second position pops at the tree line. The jumbo's extra armor shrugs the first hits. The gunner squeezes one round, center barn door crack, and the lane opens. The push is not a parade. The Germans have teeth on every approach, Panzerfaust teams at corners, Pak guns behind low walls, mortars walking the road. But Abrams staggers the advance. Tank infantry teams bound by bounds, smoke when the fields are too open, speed when the hedgerows give a corridor. Every minute matters. Every 100 yards is a life bargain back to Bastogne. At 4:45 p.m., the line on the map turns from theory to contact. Ahead, American recognition panels flash from a frozen field. A flare arcs green. On the far side of the hedgerow, 101st Outposts lift their heads from snow and disbelief. On the division net, Major General Hugh J. Gaffey, commanding the 4th Armored Division, keys his handset to send the news north and up the chain. Maj. General Hugh J. Gaffey, paraphrase, radio. Corridor open to Bastogne. At 3rd Army Headquarters, the reply is pure Patton, short, cold, kinetic, Lieutenant General George S. Patton, Jr. Now let's widen it. Relief isn't release. The corridor is a ribbon, not a highway, narrow, iced, and under fire. Through the night and the next days, German counterattacks try to pinch it at the villages south and east of town. The job shifts from breaking in to prying open. Clear the hedgerows, take the crossroads, hold the shoulders, while convoys thread ammo and plasma up the artery into Bastogne. Tanks that punch through at dusk are blocking by midnight, trading shots across orchards glazed with hoarfrost. For the 101st, the change is immediate and electric. Medics get the sheets of plasma they begged the sky for. Artillery stacks real fuses next to frozen boots. Signal swaps dying batteries for fresh ones. Most of all, they feel the weight of the 3rd Army on their side of the scale. The siege hasn't ended, but the balance has flipped. Across the line, the tone changes from swagger to arithmetic. Fuel Bowsers are empty, reserve companies are paper. SS Obergruppenführer Sepp Dietrich, who mocked shopkeepers a week earlier, now hears on his own nets that Bastogne, the hub his armor needed, has been broken open by an American army that wasn't supposed to be here for weeks. General Feldmarschall Walter Model sees the same on his map, a southern wedge that threatens to peel back the Bulge from its most critical joint. Myth versus reality #2 myth. Bastogne was liberated on the 22nd or 23rd. Reality. The garrison held through the worst. Airdrops began 12/23, and the ground corridor was opened on 12/26 by Cobra King, and the 37th Tank Battalion then widened under fire in the days that followed. This is the hinge where German mockery ends. The jeer about American shopkeepers runs into a ledger it can't balance. 48 to 72 hours of cold weather maneuver, FM radios tying armor to infantry, engineers opening lanes, MPs waving 1,000 trucks through the dark, and a tank named Cobra King, shouldering into a town that refused to quit. The insult doesn't age well under 50 cal tracer. Bastogne is breathing again, but the Bulge still bulges. To end the gamble for good, the southern wedge must link with the northern shoulder and squeeze until the salient snaps. The next acts will be about air power under clear skies, counterblows at places like Celis, and a hard winter grind toward Hufvudstaden. But none of that happens without 4:45 p.m., December 26, when Cobra King broke the ring and the laughter died in the snow. The next acts will be about air power under clear skies, counterblows at places like Celis, and a hard winter grind toward Hufvudstaden. Quiet aftermath on the outskirts of Bastogne. The crew of Cobra King stands beside their tank, faces marked with soot and exhaustion, posing for a photo in the pale afternoon light. Behind them, snowdrifts fall slowly, muffling the battlefield's silence. On the tank's glacis, chalk letters still read Cobra King, overlay side by side. The 101st Airborne Screaming Eagle patch and the 4th Armored Cloverleaf insignia, glowing faintly against the white snow symbols of the link that broke the siege. Documentary realism, subdued winter colors, natural snowfall, 4 kelvins, 16 to 9. While Bastogne breaks open, another door slams shut hard near the Meuse. December 24 to 26. The 2nd Panzer Division makes the deepest German thrust of the whole offensive, nosing toward Dinant and the bridges that would crack the road to Antwerp. They're met by the American 2nd Armored Division Hell on Wheels and a brace of British and US units converging like jaws at cells. It's a classic American counterpunch. Task forces peeling in from multiple roads, artillery calling, time on target on the village edges, tank destroyers watching the lanes. Fuel is the German clock, and at Celles,
By
that
December
clock runs
26th,
out. By the morning of the 26th, the tip of 2nd Panzer sits in a pocket, hammered from 3 sides. Its hope of the Meuse evaporated in the winter Sunday. And here's myth versus reality, number 1 inch the wild. Myth, the SS drove farthest. Reality, the deepest nose belonged to Wehrmacht's 2nd Panzer Division, and it died on the vine at Celles, not at Bastogne. Up north, the Elsenborn Ridge never broke. 99th Infantry Division, green on the map but iron in the foxholes, lock shoulder to shoulder with the veteran 2nd Infantry Division. They mass artillery, wire in FM radios, and use the proximity fuse to shear off assault waves. By holding this high ground, they deny the 6th SS Panzer Army its fast lanes west. The northern hinge of the Bulge is bolted. East of there, the most feared spearhead Kampfgruppe paper bleeds momentum by the mile. SS Obersturmbannführer Joachim Peiper, a hard-driving regimental commander from the 1st SS Panzer Division, keeps pushing for bridges and fuel. But the Americans aren't simply blocking, they're subtracting the bridges. At Trois-Ponts and Stavelot, Lieutenant Colonel David E. Pergrin, commanding the 291st Engineer Combat Battalion, reads the ground like a hunting map and gives a cold order. Lieutenant Colonel David E. Pergrin, paraphrase, blow the bridges. Without those crossings, fuel turns from asset to anchor. Peiper's column detours, fights for Stavelot, tries Trois-Ponts again, and finds only gaps where roads should be. The net cinches. By L'Église, the numbers stop adding up. Peiper makes a brutal choice. Abandon the vehicles, save the men. The steel stays, the survivors walk. Peiper, paraphrase, diary tone, out of fuel, blocked in every direction. One engineer squad turns geometry into strategy. They let 2 German tanks clatter across a narrow bridge bait and then drop the span under the rest of the column. Stranded, the pair across the creek become islands. A satchel charge shears the tracks on the lead. A shaped charge punches under the belly of the 2nd. A minute of violence buys hours for the defense. Multiply that by a dozen choke points, that's how you turn speed into standstill. These 3 lines, Celles, Peiper, Elsenborn, aren't side notes. They're the frame that holds the picture. At Celles, the dream of Antwerp ends. At L'Église, the most lethal German spear snaps. On Elsenborn Ridge, the northern door stays barred. Put together, they do what strategy is supposed to do. Deny options. Without a bridge at Dinant, without fuel on the Amblève, without a breakthrough on the ridge, the Bulge stops being a highway and becomes a trap waiting to be sprung. From here, pressure climbs from both shoulders. 3rd Army widening the corridor around Bastogne, 1st Army grinding down from the north. The next week will write itself in hard towns and cold fields, but the shape is set. The German salient shrinks, the initiative shifts, and the January plan becomes a vice closing toward Houffalize. At dawn on New Year's Day, 1945, the Luftwaffe makes one last bet. Operation Bodenplaat, a coordinated, low-level strike on Allied airfields across Belgium and the Netherlands. The goal is simple and desperate. Smash our fighters on the ground, win back the skies over the Bulge, and buy time for the German salient to breathe. For a few brutal hours, it works. Hangars burn, parked P 47 seconds, and Spitfires take hits. At some fields, the first warning is tracer fire lacing the flight line, but the ambush cuts both ways. At Ash, Y-29, American P-51 seconds and P-47 seconds claw into the air under fire and tear into the attackers. Across the belt of targeted bases, RAF and USAAF squadrons scramble, ground crews drag intact aircraft to fresh dispersal, and flak batteries wake up angry. By nightfall, the numbers tell the real story. The Allies lose hundreds of aircraft, many on the ground, yet we can replace them. The Luftwaffe loses airframes, and what it cannot replace: veteran pilots. Navigation errors, friendly flak, and tight Allied defenses turn the raid into a one-day spike of destruction that Germany simply cannot absorb in January 1945. So when the snow clouds part again over the Ardennes, Allied air superiority returns, fighters prowling the roads, Jabos pouncing on columns, transports dropping supplies. Bodenplatte buys the Bulge, no future. It spends the Luftwaffe's last currency, its experience right when Third Army is widening the Bastogne corridor, and First Army is squeezing from the north. From here on, the sky is no refuge. It's a hammer. On January 16, 1945, near the crossroads town of Houffalize, the pincers finally touch. Elements of 1st U.S. Army pushing south and 3rd U.S. Army driving north handshake on a ruined road under a winter Sunday. The map calls it a link-up. The men who made it call it breathing again. From here, the Bulge is no longer a breakout. It's a pocket under pressure. Day by day, through late January, American and British corps straighten the line, hammering the shoulders, forcing the German columns back toward the Siegfried Line. The Ardennes that once promised a dash to Antwerp becomes a maze of wrecks, frostbite, and dead ends. General Feldmarschall Walter Model, Army Group B, paraphrase. The issue isn't only that Americans are stronger, our formations are spent. General Feldmarschall Gerd von Rundstedt, OB West, paraphrase. After the Ardennes, we have no strategic reserve. US is approximately equal to 19,000 Kaya. Total casualties is approximately equal to 80-90 K. German is approximately equal to 67 K. Some estimates up to 100 K. Armor divided by air losses severe. Numbers can't carry the weight of those weeks. Houffalize is a symbol, not an ending. Bastogne's corridor widens. Elsenborn Ridge still holds. Engineers keep blowing bridges in the Germans' face. And above it all, after Bodenplatte, Allied air power prowls again. The mockery that opened this campaign, shopkeepers, merchants, has gone quiet. On January 16, the ring that once tightened around Bastogne is now closing around the Bulge itself. The reckoning has begun. The road ahead runs east. Time to sort legend from history. Myth versus reality. 6th SS encircled. Myth. The 6th SS Panzer Army was totally encircled. Reality. SS Oberstgruppenführer Sepp Dietrich's army group was stopped and pushed back, not bagged. Checked at Elsenborn Ridge and along the northern shoulder, its units withdrew toward the Siegfried Line, fighting rearguards and slipping out, battered, but not sealed off. Myth. The SS drove the deepest spear. Reality. The furthest German reach came from 2nd Panzer Division, Wehrmacht, under Hasso von Manteuffel's 5th Panzer Army. It was stopped and cut near Selles, outside Dinant, by the U.S. 2nd Armored Division Hell on Wheels. Myth. Ike personally phoned the 48-hour order. Reality. Accounts differ some sight. General of the Army Dwight D. Eisenhower on the line. Others stress his co-S, Lieutenant General Walter Beadle Smith, steering the Verdun Conference. Either way, Lieutenant General George S. Patton Jr. locked the commitment. 3 divisions in 48 hours. Myth. Bastogne was only the 101st Airborne. Reality. The 101st Airborne, Brig General Anthony C. McAuliffe, led the stand, but 10th Armored Division combat teams, Cherry, O'Hara, de Sabri, plus attached tank destroyers and artillery, formed the outer ring that blunted early German armor. Myth. Air power decided the battle from the start. Reality. Weather grounded most Allied air until Deck 23. The line was held by infantry, engineers, and artillery, including proximity-fused shells. When the skies cleared, IX Troop Carrier Command resupplied Bastogne, and P-47 seconds turned columns on snow into targets, but the save began on the ground. Myths make great posters. The map, the weather log, and the unit diaries tell the real story. Here's what Bastogne still teaches. Speed beats perfect plans. Lieutenant General George S. Patton Jr. didn't wait for the stars to align. He pivoted an army in 48-72 hours and hit first. Decentralized leadership wins messy fights. When captains fell, sergeants and corporals stepped up, platoons kept moving, guns kept firing, bridges kept blowing on time. Logistics is strategy and work boots. The Red Ball Express grinding through ice. FM radio nets, keeping columns synchronized. Proximity fuses, turning artillery into airbursts. MPs routing intersections like conductors of a steel orchestra. Psychology matters. Malmedy hardened resolve. A single word, nuts, became a banner every rifleman could march behind. And coalitions win long wars. The Northern Shoulder under Field Marshal Bernard L. Montgomery, the East-West balance under General Omar N. Bradley, the hard-pressed First Army of General Courtney H. Hodges, the south-to-north punch of Third Army, Friction and debate, yes, but a single purpose in contact. Break the bulge, end the gamble. German mockery ended at Bastogne. It was drowned out by speed, discipline, and the quiet stamina of ordinary Americans' infantry in wet foxholes, engineers with cold hands on detonators, drivers following blackout cat eyes, gunners counting down on a proximity fuse. The map changed because people held. Your family served in the Bulge. If your family served in the Bulge, Bastogne, Elsenborn, Street Vith, the Muse drop a comment with unit and story. We'll pin a few and make sure those footsteps in the snow are heard. Sources consulted: CM Hay, Eisenhower Library, National WWII Museum, IWM, USHIM, Davids, Unit Histories.